We are the Purposeful Project. We help entrepreneurs for free. Welcome to today's Pep Talk, where we'll take just 20 minutes to interview leading experts from around the world who share actionable know-how, insights and life lessons. To hear these incredible insights, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Or you can simply visit thepurposefulproject.com, sign up to our mailing list and get the podcast in your inbox every single week. Welcome, Musheer, to today's podcast. Thank you for joining us. Perhaps we could start off by you kindly telling the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do and why.
Thank you for having me, Simon. It's a pleasure speaking to you again after a while. I'm the founder and MD of Fintech Asia. Fintech Asia is a venture builder that is enabling fintech companies across Asia and those interested in Asia to go to market. We also work with companies on their content in terms of thought leadership and white papers. And lastly, we run large-scale virtual fintech events to bridge the network across Asia and overseas, and we are part of the Hong Kong Start Me Up HK Festival as the core organizing event on fintech.
So when you talk about fintech, how do you define that these days? I guess it's evolving, right?
I look at fintech and I'm like, it's something that's probably been around for over 100 years. If we take the telegram that was being used for communicating messages for the stock markets in London and New York, right? However, in the modern context, for me, fintech is the use of technology to drive the end engagement and business with the end customer, right? It's not just about operations or IT or back office, but about how can you offer better services for end consumers, be it institutions or be it a retail customer.
How did you get into the fintech space?
Its roots are in London. So I came to Hong Kong to do my MBA, and the last leg of my MBA was in London Business School. And through the business school, I got to visit Level 39, which is the startup incubation hub of the Canary Wharf Group, right? Met a few fintech companies there, and when I came back to Hong Kong in the summer of 2015, I looked around for fintech companies. I didn't see any, right? So I started engaging in whatever few activities, events that were taking place in Hong Kong at the time, and subsequently started getting involved in the community, going on to co-found the Fintech Association of Hong Kong, and then taking over as the inaugural general manager full-time, building the association for the first 2.5 years.
Now, Hong Kong is one of the top financial hubs in the world. So the Fintech Association, what's their role in ensuring that, I guess, for Hong Kong in the future?
The Fintech Association is a not-for-profit body. It's a community organization, right, with three main goals of advocacy, collaboration, and education. So we were the first industry body and probably the only one that are solely focused on fintech. And we work closely with the regulators and government bodies on advocacy, helping them with policy framing, as well as giving our feedback on different policies for fintech, from open banking to cryptocurrencies to the virtual banking, etc. While on the collaboration front, we bring together large corporates and startups at the same table to discuss and be able to work together. And lastly, education, not just working with universities to enable students to understand how technology is reshaping financial services, but also for existing professionals to understand what they need to do to upskill themselves and stay relevant in today's world.
And why are you based in Hong Kong?
I love Hong Kong's vibrancy, right, and the energy that Hong Kong has. I'm probably too much in love with Hong Kong and have a bit blind side when it comes to the city. But in terms of when I came over to Hong Kong to do my MBA and the reason for me to stay over, I found three main things about Hong Kong that keeps it most interesting for me. One is, as you said, it's a major financial center and Asia's largest, right, and most active. So that, having come from a trading and capital markets background, I spent a decade trading US and European markets. I found this to be very relevant to my background, right? So that's number one. Number two was It is an international city right at the heart of East Asia, right? So, with the proximity to mainland China, the business that you can do in mainland China, while still being in an international environment, both regulatory wise and from a living perspective, was very attractive to me. Being originally from India, I was quite keen to bridge the India-China startup corridor as well, and Hong Kong provides that perfect bridge for that, right? That's number two. And number three is it's got that Hong Kong's got that hustle, right? If you could use that term, I know it's overused in the entrepreneurship world, but I call Hong Kong Mumbai on steroids. It's just got so much energy. People are always hustling, all the time busy, and there's a very cracking energy about the city, right? And you get consumed by it. Some people can't take it, but I love that energy, and that fuels me to keep striving to get better. So yeah, that's the three main reasons I love Hong Kong and what brought me here. Yeah.
I lived there for 20 years and know exactly what you mean. It's such an amazing energy, and it's like London on steroids. I'm in London now, so I can relate to your love of the city. And so I'm always interested in
steroids in London on a hot boiler if you consider the humidity here.
True, yes. Yeah, well, nowhere's perfect, I guess. That's the bottom line. But I know what you mean about the energy. Yeah. So I always like to get in the minds of my guests and say, I'm interested. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or bred?
It's a bit of both. So I've answered these questions before as a trader. You have these questions about, are traders born, or are they, can they be bred or made? It's never a clear cut answer. Because people evolve over time. Your risk appetites evolve, your circumstances evolve, right? I come from a family that is quite entrepreneurial. My dad was a businessman, as you would call it, in old school ways, right? In today's world, would have been an entrepreneur. And I've been exposed to entrepreneurship from a very young age, or to help him sell goods at the age of 4 or 5, and similar things for my aunts, etc. So I've always had that in my veins, and a lot of my roles, even as a trader, it was a prop trading role, which meant I had to build my own book. So you had to be entrepreneurial. So I feel there is a sense of you growing into an environment that requires it, and it's a very personality thing. So largely it's bred based on the environment you're in, because on the other side I have people who have come from similar backgrounds as me but aren't entrepreneurial at all, right? So it's a mix, I would say. Some people are born with it because from a very young age they want to hustle, they want to build their own thing, which is different. But being able to take that risk and sustain that, and having a passion for it is the most vital element.
Good answer. I like it. Yeah, it's I guess looking at Hong Kong now, there are a few unicorns. It's quite an exciting, growing ecosystem. Are there any unicorns that jump out at you?
Sorry, didn't interrupt. Go on.
No, go ahead. What's the latest one?
So we had one this week, which is Animoco Brands, right?
Yatsu, amazing entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah, so they raised 888,088 dollars, as it were, the number 8, at a valuation of 1 billion, making them Hong Kong's latest unicorn.
It's exciting, isn't it? I guess I'm assuming all the listeners know what a unicorn is. Of course, a company with a valuation of over $1 billion. But do you? Well, who's going to be the next unicorn in your view?
Very tricky, right? I think Airwallex is lining up towards becoming one, if you consider them to be a Hong Kong company. Their headquarters is now in Hong Kong, right? And the founders are based here as well. In addition to Airwallex, I probably think one of the virtual banks in Hong Kong are primed to reach that stage very quickly, right? Although a lot of them are backed by conglomerates of well-known financial institutions and tech institutions, I do feel they are heading towards that in the next year or so. Some of them have got some very good traction, and with the Greater Bay Area opening up, those who are well placed for the Wealth Connect, in particular, I would place my bets on them.
The Greater Bay Area you're mentioning there, do you mind, for my audience that don't know what you mean, explaining exactly what that's all about?
Sure. The Greater Bay Area, or the official name for which is the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. This is in southern China, includes the province of Guangdong, which is part of mainland China, and the two special administrative regions of Macau and Hong Kong. It's a new policy that brings together these three provinces or three regions to under one banner of the Greater Bay Area, where the policy will be uniform and access for both businesses and individuals will be greatly increased with a lot of movement of people, businesses, etc. Over time. There's going to be special provisions for more access on both sides. So as I mentioned, like things like the Wealth Connect, where Hong Kong companies licensed and registered in Hong Kong can now have an opportunity to sell their products to about 76 million other people, right, in the Guangdong province. Now, for context, the Greater Bay Area is roughly about 75 to 80 million people in size. That's probably equivalent to the populations of France or Germany, right? With a GDP currently of about $1.7 trillion, making it one of the largest Bay Areas in the world after Tokyo and San Francisco and Bay Area and New York. It is projected that by 2030, this region will have a GDP of $3 trillion, making it among the top economies in the world. It has a per capita of about 30,000 US, but expected to grow significantly as well. It has some of the world's most known cities when it comes to tech and financial services and trade. Guangzhou, one of the world's oldest trade capitals, is the capital of the Guangdong province. Then, of course, you have Hong Kong as the financial hub, Shenzhen as the technology hub, and then Macau as the pseudo entertainment hub, if you want to call it that, right? And that's where the building is happening. I personally call it the combination of Hong Kong and Shenzhen as the Silicon Valley of the East. It's the literal fin meets tech, and that for me is going to be very, very exciting in the coming years.
I would argue it's more powerful than Silicon Valley because they don't really have the production capability in Silicon Valley. So when you connect the money to the production, like the Hong Kong Shenzhen connection,
Yeah.
it's I was just reading 90% of the world's patents are actually in Shenzhen.
Yeah, it's an amazing city, right? It's young city. The roots are about 40 to 60 years old, from a sleeping fishing village to a city now that has the most number of skyscrapers in the world, right? Hong Kong has the most number of tall buildings in the world, but Shenzhen has the most number of skyscrapers. People from all over mainland China have settled there. Very young city as well. And some of the world's largest technology firms, from Tencent to Huawei, are there. Ping An is there as well. And then you bring that together with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, which is now competing with the New York Stock Exchange as the world's largest when it comes to IPO listing. You have that combination of these two. If I remember correctly, I think Shenzhen is now ranked about 11th in the financial centers in the world in the global rankings. So you're talking about number 3 and number 11. High net worth, ultra high net worth individuals, Hong Kong's number 3 or 4. So a lot of wealth, a lot of talent, and a lot of technology. So very, very interesting space. So this will become the gateway for mainland China, and in the longer run, I expect this to be the model at which mainland China's other provinces will also operate, because you are looking at policies opening up for foreign companies to come in. Earlier this year to late last year, they changed the policy for allowing foreign institutions to own majority stake in financial institutions. So banks in particular. So that's opening up. So Goldman, JP Morgan, etc. can now own their own branded, fully owned entities in mainland China.
That's big.
And that will evolve. Yeah.
That's a very important point, I think, because the news we get globally is of course often slightly negative about Hong Kong. You don't therefore hear the positive, and that is a big change. They're allowing you can own your own business there as a complete entity, which is a big change. It's a big change, and that's going to help the growth, I think, of the Greater Bay Area model too. So that's really exciting. I guess just wrapping up the chat with you today, I guess I think my audience might like to hear a little bit about what you think's unique about the startup community in Hong Kong.
The Hong Kong startup community has 3 very unique things that I find, right? One is it's probably one of the best melting pots of Western entrepreneurs working with Asian entrepreneurs, right? About one third to 40% of Hong Kong entrepreneurs are foreigners, right? So it just tells you that there's a huge number in the startup ecosystem, and so they're coming from different cultures and they're trying to merge together. So you have the mainland Chinese influence, you have Asians from India like me, or from Singapore or other parts, and then of course Hong Kong Chinese people who are also very entrepreneurial, right? So yeah, that's number one. It's a melting pot. Number two is we have a very good balance of women and men in the entrepreneurship community, right? Which is not very common in the startup tech world. According to a survey done by W Hub and in their report on Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area, in particular about Hong Kong, about 45% of employees in startups in Hong Kong are women, right? Which is a fairly high number when it comes to startup ecosystem. And I think that's a big strength, and I do see a lot of women involved here. And it's a very important element. It's not about diversity, it's just about the equal opportunity for both genders to participate, and it's a very vital element. Number three for me on the entrepreneurship scene that makes it unique is its ability to evolve and adapt, right? You were talking about how people are saying what will happen to Hong Kong. For the last 2 decades in particular, people looked at Hong Kong as this gateway to China, right? And that's what it was for many people, set up in Hong Kong and then operate across and access mainland China. But here is again another new situation for Hong Kong to deal with, and I'm very confident, and I believe that Hong Kong people are very adaptable. It takes time for change everywhere, yes, but you've seen a lot of changes in the early 1900s, etc. It was a trade hub, then it became a manufacturing hub. Made in Hong Kong was a massive brand in the 60s and 70s, in our parents' time, or even 80s. Then it evolved into becoming a services hub, right, which is what it is right now. And now it's changing its nature to become more of a facilitator, as the chief executive likes to call it, the super connector, right? So keeping that in mind, I think people in Hong Kong have that ability to connect. They understand the big picture and are able to bridge across cultures, and I find that very exciting.
I couldn't agree more. It's a model that a lot of people could learn from. The female founder stats are impressive, and that should be the standard around the world. So once again, I feel like Hong Kong's leading the way and showing what it should be like. So as a member of the startup community in Hong Kong, although I'm based in London, I also want to just say that it really is quite a special place. And I think what you just mentioned there about the cultural mix is something, I think if you want a global business, then set it up in Hong Kong, because you get global perspective within your team. It's not just, if you just set up in England and a lot of English people, that's fine. But then maybe you think, you only think about the English market. And whereas in Hong Kong, you do, as you quite rightly say, have such a big melting pot of culture that you end up thinking global from day one, even though Hong Kong itself is a small market with the Greater Bay Area to extend to. You have that international mindset. That's the thing that always impressed me about the companies that I've run there, was the talent you had around the table that was international. It wasn't just thinking necessarily about the local market, which is exciting. And so thanks for highlighting it. And so it's just wonderful to talk to you. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge on Hong Kong and entrepreneurship. I guess I'm just going to wrap up by asking, have you got any words of wisdom for any aspiring entrepreneurs listening?
Firstly, thank you for having me. Words of wisdom, I think I'm still in the process of learning, so less of words of wisdom and more so my experience. If you are building something as an entrepreneur, the key element is knowing, having a lot of passion for what you do. So, loving what you do and being able to get up every day and wanting to push it. But more importantly, having a sense of practicality over a period of time. Sometimes the desire to push and become an entrepreneur is so overwhelming that you don't realize the damage it may be doing to your personal and financial status, right, in the longer run. So knowing when to quit in the medium term is very important. It's just quit, maybe get back to something else and come back when the time is right. You'll always have an opportunity. Too many times people feel it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to become an entrepreneur, and they give a lot and then they fight against the markets, because a lot of times, as we say, right, a huge number of companies, startups fail. So it doesn't mean you did it wrong. It just means it's statistically you're likely to fail, more likely to fail. And Simon, you've run a lot of businesses, and I'm sure not all of them were roaring successes. So I think that's the key element, is knowing when to quit and then bouncing back again once you're refueled and recharged.
I think this is such amazing advice, because I think there's always this message of, like, generally in startup land, like, push through, it's meant to be painful. And actually, what you just said there, I think is so spot on. The hardest thing personally I've ever done is had to shut a company. Actually, sometimes it's easier to keep it going and have pain.
Yeah.
But actually, the brave thing sometimes is to say, like you just said, okay, it's not working now. I stop, I come back another day. It's a long road, right? Hopefully, in Hong Kong, I think the average age of living is like 87. So you've got a long road, right? Many years ahead of you. And sometimes it's about pacing yourself. And I think this ties well into, like, mental health issues that people perhaps put themselves under, and they don't need to do that. And they need to pace themselves and adjust. So such wonderful advice and such insight into Hong Kong, and such wonderful knowledge of fintech. We're lucky to have you here today sharing that knowledge. Really appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Thank you for listening to Pep Talk today, powered by the Purposeful Project. If you found it interesting, please give us a review and follow us. In addition, you can sign up to our website and get loads more free entrepreneur knowledge, as well as get access to Pep Talk and the Purposeful Project podcast direct in your inbox every week.